My son, the one I held through febrile seizures, just smirked. "Mom, if your account were empty, how would you look?" he asked, right before transferring my life savings. He didn't know that in that moment. A 62-year-old woman with a shattered heart began coldly planning to take the one thing he craved, his future. "My name is Eleanor Whitford. I am 62 years old, a widow, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I had a son who loved me. I was only coming back for my reading glasses. I'd left them on the dining room table after lunch. A simple act of forgetfulness in the quiet suburban house in Riverton that I'd shared with my husband, Mark, and then with my son, Dylan." The front door was unlocked, as it always was. I pushed it open gently, the hinges silent from a recent oiling. I was halfway to the kitchen, moving on the soft runner in the hall, when I heard Dylan's voice from the living room. It was not his normal voice. It was his voice. Yes. But it was coated in something sharp and unfamiliar. And then he laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound that snagged the air. "Mom, if your account were empty, how would you look?" The question hung in the silence. It was followed by that same brittle laugh, a private joke shared with someone on the phone. I stopped. My hand went to the wallpaper in the hallway, the familiar floral pattern suddenly feeling like sandpaper under my palm. I stood perfectly still, hidden by the angle of the wall. Dylan's voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial, intimate. "It's done, babe. All of it. Transferred to your account at Northridge Credit. She won't see it coming." My heart didn't just speed up. It slammed against my ribs. A trapped bird. My breath caught in my throat, hot and tight. I could smell the faint, clean scent of the lemon polish I'd used on the floors that morning. Sunlight streamed through the hall window, illuminating a framed photograph on the opposite wall. Mark, myself, and a 10-year-old Dylan at the county fair. All of us smiling, sticky with cotton candy. In the living room, the television was on, the distant, cheerful noise of a game show punctuating the horror of my son's words. $350,000, Dylan said, and the number itself felt like a physical weight. 350,000. It was not just money. It was the sale of Whitford Home Repair and Supply, the company Mark and I had built from nothing. It was my retirement fund. It was the 40 years of scrimping and saving, of late nights and skipped vacations. It was my entire life, quantified and stolen. I heard the tinny, faint reply from the phone, and for the first time, I registered the name of the woman he was speaking to, Lena Hart, his wife, a woman in her 30s, all sharp angles and perfect teeth, beautiful in that hard, curated way the internet seems to demand. Her voice was just a murmur, but I caught the words. "We'll finally get out of this miserable town." My son laughed again. "She's so easy. The naive old mom. Just pretend she's a little confused and she buys anything." A flash, bright and painful. Seared my mind, Dylan. Age 6. Crying in his bed during a thunderstorm. His small, damp hand clutching mine as he whispered, "You'll keep me safe." Right. Mommy. Each word he spoke now was a betrayal, a calculated cruelty that erased the boy I knew. He was talking about me, his mother, as a mock, as a fool. The urge to storm in, to scream, to demand an explanation, rose in me like bile. But a colder, sharper instinct took over. I knew Dylan. I knew how he could twist words. how he could turn his own cruelty into my misunderstanding. If I confronted him now, without proof, without a plan, I would become the hysterical, confused old woman he was describing. He would look at me with those wide, innocent eyes I once adored and tell me I was imagining things, that I was stressed, that I needed to rest. He would make me the villain. Slowly, silently. I pulled my hand from the wall. I took one step back, then another, my sneakers making no sound on the wooden floor. I felt like an intruder, a thief in my own home, escaping with the only thing I had left, the terrible, devastating truth. I reached the front door, turned the knob with agonizing care, and pulled it shut. The latch clicked into place, a sound as final as a coffin closing. I sat in my car, parked on a side street I didn't recognize. My hands were clamped to the steering wheel, the plastic cool and hard beneath my palms. I wasn't going anywhere. I was just trying to breathe. The past was unspooling in my mind, fast and merciless, like a broken film projector. Where did it start? I saw Mark. My Mark. 25 years younger, his face smudged with sawdust, laughing as he hammered the first sign for Whitford Home Repair and Supply into the hard ground. We were nothing but two kids with a truck and a toolbox. I remembered us hauling lumber on weekends, me balancing the ledger at the kitchen table after midnight, our hands rough and calloused. Mark would pull me close, smelling of pine and sweat, and nod toward the empty lot that would one day be our warehouse. "This is for Dylan." "Elle," he'd say, his voice full of that quiet, steady pride. So he never has to struggle like we did. We had built an anchor in this town, a solid, reliable thing. And in one afternoon, Dylan had set it adrift. Mark had died 3 years ago. A massive stroke right in that warehouse, collapsing between aisle 4 and aisle 5, hardware and plumbing. The grief was a physical weight, a stone in my chest I still carried. Dylan had been so supportive then, or so I thought. He was the one who pushed me to sell the company. "Mum, you can't keep doing this at your age," he'd insisted, his voice gentle. "It's too much." He brought in the papers from Blue Anchor Holdings, a big construction conglomerate. He held my hand as I signed, the $350,000 a hollow compensation for my life's work. "It's your turn to rest." "Mum," he'd said. I had rested. I had trusted. And he had used that trust as a weapon. The memories shifted, becoming sharper, more painful. Dylan wasn't always this monster. I remembered him as a small boy, crawling into our bed during thunderstorms, his small body trembling. But then I remembered the other Dylan, the 15-year-old, his face pale and defiant, standing in the manager's office at the grocery store, caught trying to steal a bottle of vodka. Mark had been furious. He needs to face the consequences. Eleanor, he needs to be charged. But I couldn't. I saw my son, not a criminal. I begged. I pleaded with the manager, a man who had known us for 20 years. I used every ounce of my social standing as a local business owner. I got him off. Mark told me that night. "You're not saving him, Elle. You're teaching him that he never has to pay." I didn't listen. I paid off his credit card debt after college, thousands of dollars I never told Mark about. I believed he was just lost. I believed he was finding his way. Each time I rescued him, I was hammering another nail into the coffin of his character. I was teaching him that actions had no consequences, that love meant a blank check and a blind eye. Then, 2 years ago, Lena Hart walked into our lives. Dylan said they met at a real estate conference. She was all dazzling smiles, expensive shoes, and a terrifying, focused energy. She spoke about investments, about the future, about legacy. She would ask me questions, so cleverly, so politely. Questions about the company sale, about my retirement accounts, about our will. I thought, how wonderful. She's so modern, so practical. She cares about our family's future. I didn't see it then. I was not a mother-in-law. I was a balance sheet. She was analyzing me for parts. The final piece clicked into place. Dylan, sitting across from me at the kitchen table 6 months ago. Mom, we should get you a durable power of attorney, just in case. You know, if you ever had to go to the hospital or something, I could pay your bills, handle things. It sounded so responsible, so caring. He took me to a lawyer at Westcliff Legal Group, a man I'd never met, a trusted friend. Dylan called him. I signed the papers. I skimmed them. But I didn't read every line. Why would I? This was my son, the boy whose hand I held in the dark. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back was 62 years old. Her hair was threaded with silver, her face lined with a life of work and love, and now, this bottomless grief. But her spine was still straight. I asked the empty car, my voice a dry whisper. How many times did I choose to love you? Instead of teaching you how to pay, I drove. I have no idea for how long. The familiar streets of Riverton blurred past the windshield. The warm yellow glow of the diner, the stark white lights of the 24-hour gas station, the dark steeple of the church against the evening sky. The tears had come, a hot, blinding flood that soaked the collar of my blouse. But they had stopped. The sobbing, which had shaken my whole body, dried up. It was replaced by something else, a cold, hard clarity that settled in my stomach. The grief was still there, a huge, jagged rock, but my mind was beginning to move around it. I was shifting from why to what. What did he do? What did I hear? What comes next? The victim was receding, and the planner was taking her place. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24/7 supermarket, the bright, buzzing sign an offence in the twilight. I parked far from the entrance, under a flickering lamp that cast weak circles on the asphalt. I turned off the ignition. The silence in the car was absolute. My hands were shaking, but not from sorrow anymore. It was adrenaline. I took out my phone, the screen blindingly bright, and opened the notes application. I forced my thumb to type, to be steady. Date today. Time. Approximately 4 p.m. Heard Mom. If your account were empty, how would you look? Heard it's done, babe. All of it. Heard transferred to your account at Northridge Credit. Amount $350,000. Name Lena Hart. Seeing it in stark black and white, a digital record of my life's evisceration, made it concrete. It was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a list of evidence. My mind raced. Who could I tell? I needed someone who wouldn't tell me I was overreacting, someone who wouldn't immediately say, "But he's your son." Grace Holloway. Grace has been my best friend for over 30 years. A retired ER nurse, she's the most practical, unflappable woman I have ever known. She held my hand during Mark's funeral, not crying with me, but holding me upright. She had seen true crisis. She would know what this was. I dialed. She picked up on the second ring. Eleanor. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. Grace. That was all I got out. The story spilled out of me. A torrent of betrayal, the glasses, the laugh, the account numbers, Lena, the naive old mom. I told her everything, the words tasting like ash. Grace was silent on the other end, a deep, absorbent silence. She didn't gasp. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, the only sound was my own ragged breath. "Where are you?" she asked. Her voice was flat, the way it used to get when an ambulance was pulling in. "The parking lot, the food mart on Route 12. "Do not go home," she commanded. "Do not call Dylan. Drive to my apartment. I'm on the first floor. Come straight here. Tonight, Eleanor, I will be your left brain. Your heart gets to be offline for a while." Grace's small apartment was a bastion of order. She sat me at her tiny kitchen table, pushed a mug of hot tea into my hands, and pulled out a yellow legal pad. We were two women, well past 60, our hair greying, our hands showing age, and we were plotting. The bank. Which one? Harbour Line Federal. Where we've always been. The lawyer. The power of attorney. What was his name? Westcliff Legal Group, I whispered, the shame hot on my face. Dylan said he was a friend. "Write it down," she said, pushing the pad toward me. Grace looked at the sparse list of facts, her mouth a thin line. "At the hospital. We had mandatory training every year. Elder protection?" I flinched. "Grace, don't call it that." "What else would you call it?" she said, her voice sharp but not unkind. "They have a name for this. Eleanor. It's financial exploitation. What Dylan did isn't a lapse in judgment. It's a felony." A reflex, old and ingrained, rose in my throat. "He's still my son." Grace stopped writing. She looked up and met my eyes, her gaze unwavering. "He stopped being your son the second he laughed about you being destitute. The boy you raised, the one who was afraid of thunderstorms, he's gone. The man who did this is a predator, and you are his victim. This is not revenge. This is self-defense." I took a shaky breath. She was right. We sat there for an hour, planning. We would not confront Dylan. We would not call Lena. I was to go home and play the part he had assigned me, the slightly confused, naive old mother who hadn't noticed a thing. I would wait until the bank opened in the morning. I would gather the proof. I would give them everything. I realized, sitting in Grace's quiet, safe apartment, that my entire life as a mother had been a series of rescues. Rescuing him from a bad grade, from a shoplifting charge, from credit card debt. I had always stepped in. I had always said yes to helping him. This was the first time in my life I was preparing to say no, a final, absolute, devastating no. A no that wouldn't accept his excuses. A no that wouldn't shield him from the consequences. A no that would follow through, even if it meant watching him be led away in handcuffs. Grace drove me home as the last light faded from the sky, pulling up a block away from my house. She didn't turn off the engine. She just looked at me, her face illuminated by the green glow of the dashboard. "Remember what I said?" she ordered, her voice firm. "Turn on the voice recorder on your phone, put the phone in your purse, and leave your purse on the table near you. You are not his mother tonight. Eleanor, you are a witness in a crime. Don't forget it." I fumbled with the phone, my fingers feeling thick and stupid. I found the app and pressed the red button. The timer started counting, silently, I slipped it back into my handbag. "I'm ready," I said, though my stomach felt like it was full of wet cement. I walked down the familiar sidewalk. My house was lit up. Dylan's car, the sleek silver sedan I'd helped him buy a down payment for, was in the driveway. This was a stage, and I was about to walk onto it to play the part of a fool. I took a deep breath, arranged my face into a mask of mild, grandmotherly tiredness, normal for any Friday night, and put my key in the lock. Before I could even turn it, the door swung open. Dylan stood there, his face a perfect mask of filial concern. "Mom, where were you? I called you. Like 5 times. I was getting worried." He stepped forward and hugged me. It was a dry, quick embrace. I had to fight every instinct in my body not to recoil, not to shove him away. I forced myself to pat his back, my hand feeling alien. "Oh, don't be silly," I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady, just a little weary. "I just went over to Grace's. We got to talking, and I lost track of time." "Well, thank God." Lena's voice, smooth as silk, came from the kitchen entryway. She glided into the hall, a glass of red wine held perfectly in one hand. Her smile was blinding. "We were getting so worried about you." She, too, came forward to give me a one-armed hug, careful not to spill her drink. "How are you feeling?" "Mum, did you take your blood pressure medicine today? You know you have to be careful." It was too much. The concern was too thick, the smiles too bright. She was working, reassuring herself that I was the fragile, forgetful old woman they needed me to be. She was practically patting me on the head. Dinner was a pot roast Dylan had put in the slow cooker, with a salad Lena had tossed. It was a pantomime of domestic bliss. My purse sat on the end of the table, its microphone aimed at the center. Dylan tried to be casual as he passed the potatoes. "So, Mum, I was looking at my own savings account. The interest rates are just terrible, aren't they? Are you happy with what you're getting at Harborline?" I took a small bite of roast beef, chewing slowly, buying myself time. "Oh, I wouldn't know, dear. All those numbers just confuse me." "You should really check your online banking more often," he pressed, a little too lightly. This was it. The moment. I gave a small, self-deprecating laugh, just as I'd practiced with Grace. "Dylan, I'm 62 years old, not 22. I don't touch that online banking stuff. I just wait for my paper statement to come in the mail every month. What's the point in looking all the time? It's not like anything strange is going to happen." I watched him, a tiny, imperceptible easing in his shoulders. He glanced at Lena. She visibly relaxed, taking a slow sip of her wine, her eyes crinkling at the corners in a genuine, satisfied smile. It worked. They believed I was oblivious. My stomach churned, but I kept my performance going. The recorder in my bag captured every treacherous word that followed. Lena, forgetting her audience. Let slip. We should look at that lake house again on Sunday, the one we're about to get. Dylan shot her a warning look, but then said to me, "Just a little investment we're thinking about. Mum, things are really going to change for us this month." "That's nice, dear," I said, pushing a green bean around my plate. Later. As Dylan took the plates into the kitchen to rinse them, Lena stayed at the table with me. The sound of the faucet running covered our words. She leaned in, her perfume cloying and expensive. "Mom," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Have you ever thought about what you'd do if your account was just empty one day? You know, no one can predict the future, right? There it was. Not just theft, but the need to mock me for it, the arrogance, the cruelty. I let my gaze meet hers. I held it. I gave her a small, weak-looking smile. Lena, I've lived through enough to know that money comes and goes. Empty hands just mean you start over. It's nothing to be afraid of. I paused, then added, letting the smile fade just a fraction. But once I know who emptied them, I would never, ever sit still. Her own smile faltered for a second, a flicker of confusion in her eyes, before she dismissed me, patting my hand. You're so philosophical. Eleanor. The sound of the water in the kitchen stopped. The play was over for the night. I was waiting outside the glass doors of Harbourline Federal at 8:55 the next morning, Saturday. I had spent the night at Grace's, staring at the ceiling, my heart a cold, heavy stone. The bank opened at 9 on the dot. I was the first person through the doors, walking past the teller line to the cluster of desks in the back. Harrison Cole, the branch manager, was already there, sipping coffee and reviewing paperwork. He was a man in his 50s, decent and thorough. He had handled the finances for Whitford Home Repair for years and had processed the paperwork when Mark died. He looked up, a professional smile ready, but it vanished when he saw my face. Eleanor, good morning. You look. Is everything all right? I sat in the chair opposite his desk without being asked. No. Harrison, it's not. I need you to look at my accounts. My main savings and the retirement fund. Of course, he said, turning to his computer. I see Dylan is listed as your power of attorney, so if there's an issue, he can... That is the issue, I said, my voice flat. I believe he has taken money without my permission. Harrison's demeanor shifted instantly. The friendly neighbor was gone, replaced by the bank manager. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. He didn't speak for a full minute. He just scrolled, his brow tightening. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and careful. Eleanor, I am seeing 3 very large outbound transfers over the last 2 weeks. The first was for $100,000. The second, a few days later, for $150,000. The last one was yesterday afternoon, for another $100,000. My breath hitched, even though I knew, totaling $350,000, he confirmed. He clicked again. All 3 transfers were sent to an account at Northridge Credit in the name of Lena Hart. He read the memos attached to the transfers. They're labeled Family Support and Investment Reconciliation. He swiveled his chair to face me fully. Now, Eleanor, here is the legal reality. Because your son holds a durable power of attorney, from the bank's perspective, these are authorized transactions. He has the legal right to act as you. But I didn't know, I whispered. He told me nothing. This isn't for my benefit. This is theft. If you are stating that, Harrison said, his voice firming. If you are officially reporting that this was done without your knowledge and that he has abused his fiduciary duty, then we can act. But you have to be 100% certain. This isn't just a family disagreement you can take back Monday. I am certain, I said. He printed a single sheet of paper. It was an affidavit, a sworn statement that I, Eleanor Whitford, had not authorized these transactions and believed I was a victim of financial exploitation. I took the pen from his desk. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely form the letters of my name. Signing this was the true point of no return. It was the end of my son. The moment I signed, I felt a dizzying wave of nausea, followed by a strange, Arctic calm. It was done. "Okay," Harrison said, businesslike. He picked up his phone. "I am freezing all access associated with that power of attorney, effective immediately. Dylan Whitford can no longer see or touch any of your accounts at this institution." He then walked me over to a woman at another desk, an elder client protection specialist. She explained that the bank was filing its own reports, but that I needed to go to the police and the district attorney's office immediately. As she was giving me a pamphlet, Harrison returned. He looked deeply uncomfortable. "Eleanor, this has essentially zeroed out your primary funds. I am so sorry." He hesitated, then leaned in. A thought just occurred to me. What about that old account you and Mark opened at Everstone Credit Union? The rainy day certificate of deposit. It wasn't linked to any of this. Do you still have that? I froze. We had opened it 25 years ago, a small what-if fund at a totally different bank, precisely so we wouldn't be tempted to dip into it. The statements came by mail, and I just filed them. Dylan had never known about it. "Yes," I said slowly. I think there's about $60,000 in it." $60,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't zero. It was survival. It was enough to pay my property taxes, to eat, to hire my own lawyer if I had to. And in that instant, I made a silent vow. I would not tell anyone else about this. Not Grace, not the police, not the DA. This was my secret. If Dylan found out I wasn't completely broken, he and Lena would see it as one more thing to try and get, or worse. He would use my stability as a bargaining chip for my pity. No. As far as the world was concerned, I was the destitute old woman he had tried to make me. "Good," Harrison said, understanding the look in my eye. "Don't touch it. Keep it separate." He stood up. "The bank has done what it can here. Our internal investigation unit will cooperate fully. But Eleanor, that money is sitting in Lena Hart's account. You need to go to the Oakbridge County District Attorney's office. Right now. They are the only ones who can get a judge to freeze her account before she disappears with it." I walked out of the bank. The air was cool and bright. A flicker of the old me, the mother, whispered in my head. "If you had just let him take the punishment for the shoplifting if you hadn't paid the credit card." I shook my head, cutting off the thought. Regret was a trap. I got in my car and aimed it toward the county courthouse. I had a busy day ahead. The Oakbridge County District Attorney's office was not a comforting place. The waiting room was painted a dull, institutional beige, and the chairs were hard plastic, bolted to the floor. I sat surrounded by the quiet, buzzing misery of other people. A young woman with a bruised eye, a tired-looking man clutching a stack of eviction notices. We were all just files waiting to be opened, our personal tragedies reduced to case numbers. I felt small, anonymous, and profoundly sad. A woman with a clipboard called my name. Eleanor Whitford. She led me down a hall to a small, cluttered office. The woman behind the desk stood up, extending a hand. "Mrs. Whitford, I'm Assistant District Attorney Maya Alvarez. Please, sit." She was in her early 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore no jewelry, and her suit was practical. There was no gentle preamble. "Mr. Cole from Harborline Federal called ahead," she said, looking at a note on her desk. "He gave me the outlines. I want you to know, before we begin, that what you are describing is not a family dispute. It is a criminal offense." Her directness was a relief. I didn't have to convince her. She already believed me. I laid out my evidence on her desk, the bank statements Harrison had printed, my own handwritten note from the car, the power of attorney document I'd retrieved from my safe deposit box that morning. I told her everything. I told her about coming home for my glasses. I repeated the exact, cruel words I had heard Dylan say. I told her about the staged dinner, the calculated questions about my online banking, Lena's final, taunting question. When I finished, Maya was silent for a moment. "Last night, you said you recorded the conversation at dinner?" "Yes, on my phone. My friend Grace told me to." "I need that file," she said, her voice urgent. "I need you to have your friend help you copy it to a USB drive. Do not email it. Do not delete it from your phone. That audio is crucial evidence of their conspiracy and their state of mind." She leaned forward, lacing her fingers. "Let me explain the legal side. Your son is right that the power of attorney gave him access to your accounts, but it did not give him ownership. That power is a fiduciary duty. It means he is legally required to act only in your best interest. The moment he transferred $350,000 of your money to his wife's account for their own personal use, a lake house, she mentioned that is textbook misappropriation. It is a breach of fiduciary duty. It is theft." She held my gaze. "Which brings us to the hardest part. Mrs. Whitford. This will get ugly. His lawyer will paint you as confused, as spiteful, or as a forgetful old woman who did promise him the money and just forgot. To make this case stick, I need to know. Are you willing to testify against your son if this goes to trial?" The air left the room. Testify. To sit on a stand, under oath, and publicly state that my son, the boy I taught to ride a bicycle, was a criminal. This was the chasm. On one side was the lingering, toxic hope of a mother. On the other was the cold, hard ground of reality. I looked at my hands, the hands that had bandaged his knees and signed the form that gave him the power to destroy me. "I have spent my entire life saving him from the consequences of his actions," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but gaining strength. Every time, I thought I was saving him. I was just saving the problem. Perhaps this is the first and only time I am actually doing what is best for him. I am letting him finally face what he did. I looked up, meeting her eyes. "Yes, I will testify." A small, grim smile touched Maya's lips. "Good." She picked up her phone. "I am calling a judge right now to get an emergency order to freeze Lena Hart's account at Northridge Credit. With any luck, the money is still there. I'm also looping in the Financial Crimes Unit." A few minutes later, a man in a rumpled suit knocked and entered. "Detective Jonah Briggs." He introduced himself, nodding to me. Maya briefed him quickly. He sat down and opened a notepad. His questions less about the law and more about the life. "Mrs. Whitford, in the last few months, has their behavior changed? Any talk about being stressed over money? Any big plans? You mentioned a lake house. Any other talk about investments? Getting out of town? A big future?" I recounted the small, dismissive comments, the sudden interest in my health, the whispers I had ignored. Each one was another small brick in the wall of their premeditated plan. When he was done, Detective Briggs stood. "We'll be in touch. Try not to speak with your son." After he left, Maya handed me a small, folded pamphlet. The title read, "Elder Victim Bill of Rights." "You are not the only person this has happened to today. Mrs. Whitford," she said, her voice softening for the first time. "It's an epidemic, but most are too ashamed or too heartbroken to report their own children. The fact that you are standing up, it makes it that much harder for the next Dylan to look at his mother and see an ATM." 3 days later, Maya Alvarez called me. "Eleanor," she said, her voice all business. "Can you come back to my office this afternoon? Around 2, I have someone I'd like you to meet." When I arrived, Maya's small office felt even more crowded. A man was already seated in the chair I had occupied days earlier. He looked to be in his late 70s, thin and frail, with a faded flannel shirt that hung loosely on his frame. He was clutching a worn-out fabric cap in his hands, twisting it over and over. "Eleanor, this is Franklin Reese," Maya said gently. "Mr. Reese, this is Eleanor Whitford." I nodded to him, and he gave me a watery, nervous glance before looking back down at his cap. "Mr. Reese," Maya began, "was kind enough to come in today because Detective Briggs found a connection between his case from several years ago and yours." I looked at her, confused. "Mr. Reese," Maya continued, "is the father of a man named Robert Hart. Does that name mean anything to you?" I thought back. Hart, like Lena. "Exactly," Maya said. "Robert was Lena's boyfriend, long before she met your son. And about 6 years ago, Robert convinced his father, Mr. Reese, to sign a durable power of attorney." A cold dread, separate from my own, settled over me. Franklin Reese's knuckles were white as he twisted his cap. "Go ahead, Franklin," Maya encouraged him. My Robert, he was a good boy," Franklin whispered, his voice reedy. "But he got mixed up with her. She had all these big ideas. Investments. A startup. He said I should make him my POA, just to help me manage my pension. You know, in case. I thought he was just being responsible." He paused, swallowing hard. "In 3 months, she and Robert managed over $200,000 right out of my accounts, my entire retirement. After that, she was just gone, disappeared. And my boy. He was broken, drowning in debt she'd also put in his name." "Why wasn't she charged?" I asked, my voice sharp. "I was too ashamed," Franklin said, his eyes filling with tears he refused to let fall. I couldn't send my own son to jail. So I told the police I was scammed by an outsider. By her. But I wouldn't press charges against Robert. Without his testimony, and with the POA in place, the police said it was a civil matter. The case went cold. Lena's name was in the report, but never officially linked to the crime. "Until now," Maya said, picking up a file. "When Lena Hart's name and social security number were flagged by the emergency freeze on your assets, it pinged these old reports. Detective Briggs ran a new search. This wasn't a one-time thing. Eleanor, this is a pattern." She laid it out. Lena wasn't just a greedy wife. She was a predator. She targeted middle-aged men with financial problems and elderly parents who had assets. She used romance, and in Dylan's case, marriage, as a tool to gain the son's trust and cooperation. Then, She'd convinced the son to secure power of attorney, using him as the legal instrument to drain the parents' accounts before vanishing, leaving the son to face the fallout with his family. I sat there, listening, and my anger, which had been so focused on Dylan, began to broaden. It became a colder, heavier rage. This was bigger than my son's weakness and greed. My son was a fool, but Lena was the architect. She had turned my own child into a weapon and aimed him at my heart. I wasn't just Dylan's victim. I was Lena's latest victim. The investigation shows at least 3 other suspicious transfers linked to men she was involved with in other states, Maya said. All of them were settled quietly or dropped. The families were always too ashamed to push it to a criminal trial. She looked at me, her gaze intense. Eleanor, I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're up against. They will offer Dylan a deal. They will try to get you to soften, to withdraw. But if you back down, if you get scared and say this was all just a family misunderstanding, then this is just one more case that gets buried. And there will be another Eleanor. There will be another Franklin. And she will get away with it again. She was placing a moral burden on my shoulders, on top of the financial and emotional ones. But she was right. My plan, which had started as a mother's pained, desperate need for justice, solidified. This was no longer just about getting my money back or even about punishing Dylan. This was about stopping her. This was about making sure the chain of abuse she had built, using other people's children as her tools, stopped with me. My resolve became less about my personal pain and more about a cold, public duty. What do you need from me? I asked. We spent the next hour signing documents. Franklin Reese, his hands shaking but his eyes newly determined, agreed to provide his old bank statements, photos of a younger Lena, anything that would help. The legal net was closing, and Dylan, still living in my house, still pretending to be my loving son, had no idea the storm was about to break. It took less than 24 hours for the judge's order to take effect. The call came on Monday morning. It wasn't Dylan's casual, "Hey, Mom." His voice was high, cracking with a panic he was failing to conceal. "Mom, something's wrong," he said, the words tumbling out. "There's a huge misunderstanding at the bank. Lena's account. It's just frozen. They said something about a court order. It has to be a systems error. Mum, we need to go down there together and fix this. Right now." I was sitting in my kitchen, the phone pressed hard against my ear. "I'm at home. Dylan, I'm not going to any bank." "Mom, you don't understand. This is serious. If you want to talk." I cut him off, my voice a flat line. "You can come here, but just you. Lena is not welcome in this house." There was a beat of stunned silence. "Fine. Okay. I'll be right there." I hung up. Grace had already made the call. An hour earlier. Detective Jonah Briggs had stopped by, not in uniform. He had placed a small, legally approved audio recorder on the living room mantel, discreetly tucked behind a picture frame. "This is fully admissible," he had assured me. "As you are a party to this conversation and are aware of the recording." He was now, Grace had confirmed, sitting in an unmarked car just down the street, ready to intervene if things turned violent. This was not a family discussion. It was a planned operation. When Dylan burst through the front door 10 minutes later, he was a wreck. This was not the confident, smirking man from the living room. He was pale, his hair uncombed, and a film of sweat covered his forehead. His eyes were wide and darting, a strange cocktail of raw fear and misplaced anger. "Mum, what did you do?" He began immediately, pacing the carpet, not looking at me. "Why did you go to the bank without me? I told you I'd handle your finances. You must have said something to them, confused them. Now they've locked everything." He was trying to sound like the helpful, aggrieved son, but the accusation was sharp. I remained seated in Mark's old armchair. I did not stand. I let him pace, his toxic energy filling the room. "Sit down, Dylan," I said. He stopped, momentarily surprised by the cold command in my voice. He perched uneasily on the edge of the sofa. "There was no confusion," I said. "I went to the bank. I asked about my accounts. And now? You are going to answer my questions? Let's start with the first transfer. $100,000. What was it for?" That was an investment. Mom. A bridge loan. It was a great opportunity. Lena's friend. The second transfer. I interrupted. $150,000. Why? It was part of the same deal. It was time-sensitive, Mom. You don't understand this stuff. That's why I handle it for you. He was getting louder, the panic rising. And the final one. Dylan. The one from Friday afternoon. $100,000. Why did all of it go to Lena's personal account? Why was my name not on anything? Why did you never speak one word of it to me? Each question was a nail, and he was cornered. He sprang up from the sofa. "Because it's complicated. Because I didn't want to worry you," he shouted. "Why are you doing this? It's our money. We were just taking what would be mine anyway. You don't need that much at your age." He froze. The words echoed in the sudden, dead silence of the room. He had said it. He had confessed. His face went ashen as he realized, too late, what he had admitted. The recording device on the mantel captured it all. I looked at him. This stranger who wore my son's face. His ragged breathing was the only sound. "Mum, if your account were empty, how would you look?" I said, my voice quiet, but it cut through the room like a razor. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. He remembered. "That's what you asked her, isn't it?" I said, standing slowly from my chair. "You laughed. I was in the hall. I was right there, coming back for my glasses. I heard every word." I took one step toward him. "Now you see it? Dylan, take a good look." "How do I look?" He completely fell apart. It wasn't a gradual crumble. It was a total collapse. He sank back to the sofa, his head in his hands. "Mum, Mum, no, please." The false anger vanished, replaced by the terrified, sniveling boy I'd rescued 1,000 times. It was Lena. It was all her. She made me. She said this was how we'd get our future. She said if I couldn't get the money, she was going to leave me. She said you wouldn't even notice. He slid off the cushion and scrambled on his knees, grabbing for my hand. "Please, Mom, you have to fix this. Call them. Call that DA. Alvarez. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. Tell her you gave me the money. Please. Mommy, help me. Just this one last time. Please." I looked down at his hands, clutching at my legs. I pulled away. "It wasn't the bank. Dylan?" I said, my voice cold and final. "The bank didn't lock her account. The court did. A computer didn't report you. I did." I turned away from his desperate, choked sobs and walked to the front window, pulling my phone from my pocket. I typed the single, prearranged word to Detective Briggs. Now. I hit send. Almost immediately, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a friendly chime, but a hard, percussive ring that vibrated through the house. Dylan's head shot up, his face a mask of pure terror. I walked to the door and opened it. Detective Briggs stood on the mat, flanked by two uniformed officers. They didn't look at me. Their eyes were locked on Dylan. Dylan Whitford. Briggs's voice was loud in the quiet room. They moved past me. I heard the rasp of plastic, the click of the cuffs. You are under arrest for elder financial exploitation and criminal conspiracy to commit fraud. Mom! He shrieked as they pulled him to his feet. Mom! Don't let them. Please tell them. Mom. I stood by the open door, my hands shaking violently at my sides, but I did not move toward him. I watched them lead him out of my house. I watched him being put into the back of the police car. And for the first time in his 34 years, I did not run to save him. The Oak Ridge County Courthouse was an old building, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. The preliminary hearing was held in a courtroom that felt too small and too warm. I sat in the front row with Grace. Maya Alvarez was at the prosecutor's table, her files stacked in neat, dangerous piles. Then they were brought in. Dylan and Lena. They wore bright orange jumpsuits, their hands cuffed in front of them. The sight of my son in that uniform, his hair lank, his face pasty and terrified, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. He looked at the floor, a broken, shambling thing. But not Lena. Lena walked in with her chin held high, her eyes scanning the gallery. She looked defiant, bored, as if this was all a bureaucratic inconvenience. She was scanning the room, I realized, looking for the weakest person to target, to blame. The proceedings began. Dylan's public defender, a young, earnest man, spoke first. He painted a picture of a loving son manipulated by a sophisticated con artist, a man who didn't understand the legal ramifications and truly believed his mother had given him verbal consent. Lena's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, went next. He was all dismissive smiles. Your Honor, this is a tragic, but private, family dispute over assets. This is not a criminal matter. This is a mother and son disagreeing over inheritance. It has no place in a criminal court. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood, and the air in the room changed. She was not earnest, nor was she slick. She was a hammer. She laid out the bank statements, the transfer orders, the affidavit from Harborline Federal, the emergency freeze on Lena's account. And then she produced the audio file from the living room confrontation. The state will play a recording, Your Honor, in which the defendant, Dylan Whitford, confesses in his own words. She played it. The courtroom filled with my son's high, panicked voice, culminating in the shout, "We were just taking what would be mine anyway. You don't need that much at your age." A collective gasp went through the gallery. Dylan sank lower in his chair, as if trying to disappear into the floor. Maya called her first witness. The prosecution calls Franklin Reese. Franklin walked slowly to the stand, his worn cap clutched in his hands. He was sworn in. His voice was reedy, but it did not break. He told his story. He told them about his son, Robert. He told them about Lena and the power of attorney. He told them about the $200,000 that vanished from his retirement account. He told them, his voice cracking with a shame held for 6 long years. I didn't report it. I couldn't bear to send my own boy to jail. I was too ashamed. Then, Maya said, "The prosecution calls Eleanor Whitford." My legs felt like water as I walked to the stand. I swore to tell the truth, my hand on a Bible that felt ice cold. Maya led me through it. The moment I came back for my glasses, the words I heard, the staged dinner, the confrontation, the arrest. Then it was the defense's turn. Lena's lawyer approached me. "Mrs. Whitford," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You're 62 years old. Is that correct? Do you take any medication?" "I take a pill for my blood pressure. Yes." "And your memory," he said. "Is it as sharp as it used to be?" 62. It's easy to get confused, isn't it?" "I am not confused," I said, my voice clear. "Isn't it possible you misunderstood your son, that he and his wife were planning a surprise for you, an investment for you? Is stealing $350,000 a surprise?" I asked. He moved on, trying to paint me as a vindictive, controlling mother. I just kept my eyes on Maya and told the truth. When he was done, Maya stood up. "The prosecution has one final piece of evidence, Your Honor." A new audio file was queued up. "This," Maya announced to the court, "is the initial recording Mrs. Whitford captured from the hallway of the phone call she first overheard. Our audio lab has enhanced the quality." She pressed play. This time, there was no panic in my son's voice. It was clear, cold, and confident, filling the stunned silence of the court. "Mum, if your account were empty, how would you look?" And then his laugh, that sharp, hollow, cruel laugh. It was followed by Lena's tinny, excited voice. "We'll finally get out of this miserable town." The room erupted in murmurs. The atmosphere had shifted from a sad family drama to a cold-blooded conspiracy. I looked at the jury box, at the faces in the gallery. The skepticism was gone, replaced by a dark, settled anger. Dylan had his face buried in his cuffed hands, his shoulders shaking. Even Lena, for the first time, looked afraid. Her mask was gone. Her eyes darted wildly between Maya, the judge, and the exit. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order!" He looked down at the two defendants, his face grim. "I find there is more than sufficient probable cause to bind this case over for a full trial. The charges of felony elder financial exploitation, conspiracy, and grand larceny will stand." He looked at Dylan's lawyer. "The court may be willing to entertain a plea agreement for Mr. Whitford, contingent on his full and truthful cooperation against Ms. Hart. But make no mistake, gentlemen, this case is going forward." The week before the final sentencing, Maya Alvarez called me. Her voice was flat, professional. "Dylan has agreed to plead guilty to all charges," she informed me. "He is offering a full allocution. He will testify against Lena Hart, detail her entire scheme, and admit his own role in exchange for a reduced sentence recommendation." She paused. "Eleanor, I need you to know. The judge will be looking to you. Your victim impact statement will carry significant weight in deciding just how reduced that sentence will be." She hung up, and I was left with the choice. The final, terrible choice of my motherhood. I could ask for mercy, for leniency, giving him the shortest possible time, perhaps preserving some microscopic thread that might one day, decades from now, allow for a conversation. Or I could ask for justice, for the full weight of the consequences I had always shielded him from. And in doing so, I would be the one to personally sever the final tie. On the day of the sentencing, The courtroom was heavy with a sour, anxious silence. Dylan was brought in, wearing an ill-fitting suit. He looked thin, pale, and utterly broken. He stood before the judge, his hands trembling, and he read his statement. He admitted to every transfer. He admitted to the lies, to the manipulation of the power of attorney. He detailed how Lena had planned it, how she had pushed him, how she had promised him a future. But then, he looked up from the paper, his eyes finding mine for a brief, agonizing second. "She told me what to do," he said, his voice cracking. "But I did it. I was greedy, and I was a coward, and I betrayed my mother." Lena's turn was a stark contrast. Maya presented the evidence of her pattern, the emails, the fake online profiles, the bank records from Franklin Reese's case and 2 others. Lena's mask of detached confidence was gone, replaced by a sullen, venomous glare. Then, the judge looked at me. "Mrs. Whitford, you are the victim here. The court will now hear your statement regarding the sentencing of your son, Dylan Whitford." The entire room held its breath. I stood up, my hands gripping the wooden rail in front of me. I turned, not to the judge, but to Dylan. He was forced to look at me, his face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. I saw him, and for a flash, I saw the 4-year-old with the high fever, his arms wrapped around my neck. And then I saw the man, laughing in my living room. "Your Honor," I said, my voice ringing out, clear and cold. "I have loved my son my entire life. I have also rescued him my entire life. My love was the weakness he and his wife counted on. My protection was the tool they used to rob me." Dylan let out a choked sob. "I am not asking for revenge," I continued, "but I am not asking for leniency. For the first time, I am asking for consequences. I ask this court to ensure that this is the very last time Dylan Whitford has the chance to do this to anyone." I sat down. The judge brought his hands together. His voice was grim. "Lena Hart, you are a predator who uses human relationships as a weapon. This court sentences you to 12 years in a state facility." He then turned to Dylan. "Mr. Whitford, your full confession and cooperation are the only things saving you from the same. Your actions are a disgrace. This court sentences you to 6 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 4. Full restitution of all recovered funds is so ordered." The gavel struck. It was over. The officers moved in. Lena was screaming, fighting the cuffs. Dylan just stood, numb, as his were clicked into place. He looked up, his eyes searching for mine one last time. A desperate, final plea. I met his gaze. I did not look away, but I did not offer him comfort. I offered him nothing. He saw no more rescues. He saw only the hard, immovable line I had finally drawn. I walked out of the courthouse. The Riverton sky was a sheet of cold, hard grey, and the wind cut through my coat. Grace was waiting on the steps, her hand steady as she took mine. I stopped on the sidewalk, took a long, shuddering breath of the icy air, and then let it out. "My account was empty once," I said, my voice quiet. "But today, at least I am not empty in knowing I deserve respect." Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. So please, drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if this story touched you, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and hit that hype button so more people can hear it.